Blue Seat. We are so excited about our next guest on the Blue Seat, which is Dominic Calabro, President and CEO of Florida Tax Watch. And before we get too far into our subject matter, which is how tax laws impact nonprofits, Dominic, welcome to the Blue Seat.
Thank you, Felina.
Yes. So tell us a little bit more about what the mission is of Florida Tax Watch.
Well, Florida Tax Watch is a nonpartisan nonprofit, 501c3 research institute, but that's legally what it is. But it's basically the eyes and ears of the taxpayers. It looks at how state and local governments collect the taxpayers' hard-earned money and how they spend it, with an eye towards recommending how they can spend the money better. So improve outcomes for education, improve the roads, improve the economy, to help improve public policy in Florida, and really look for the long-term interests of taxpayers. Not just to be cheap, not just to save money, but to make sure Florida is the best state it could possibly be. And that we have the infrastructure, the roads, the bridges, the universities, the public schools, all the things that make Florida the great sunshine state it is today and can yet be tomorrow.
And of course, I would add into there all the nonprofits that help to make Florida wonderful as
Absolutely.
well, too.
Absolutely.
Such a great part of it and your mission. I've always been attracted to that representation from Florida Tax Watch. Well, some more specific questions in, I guess, tied into your mission, but how does that support, or how does your mission support the nonprofit sector specifically? Because I think people may think
Sure.
of you and just simply think that you're at the representing the interests of maybe business. It just could be all over the map. So I'm glad you clarified the mission, but how does it support the
Yeah, we
nonprofit
look out
sector?
for all the taxpayers, but it's we're really looking out for the public interest and the well-being. So part of that is the nonprofit sector is really, as Peter Drucker said, is a really advanced sector. I mean, it's kind of in my world, it's view, it's the best of both worlds. I mean, we serve a public purpose, but we're not entangled with a lot of red tape and bureaucracy that gets in the way of serving that public interest. So nonprofits, tax which helps them by number one, looking at how are they impacting the community they're supposed to serve. So TaxWatch actually conducts a lot of independent research where they're looking at funding from the state legislature or local governments. We sometimes look at what's the return on investment for the community, for the taxpayers. So we help them assess the impact and recommend how they can do a better job. So that's one area. Two, the very nature of what we do, trying to make Florida more advantageous to and being family friendly as well as investor owned and business friendly. I mean, it's good. The long-term interest, as long as it's balancing the needs of the workers, the customers, and the owners, then that's good. Because you can't really have a thriving business if you shortchange the employees, or if you shortchange the customers, or if you shortchange the stockholders. They're all in it together. And that's the only way you really create a very prosperous and long-term high quality of life. And so the nonprofit sectors in Florida and into the Tallahassee area and all of North Florida add tremendous, I mean, they add billions of dollars in payroll. Oh, sorry, excuse me, millions of dollars in payroll, billions of dollars of economic output. But even more than that, they add to the character. They add to the quality of life. They add to the character and improve the very outcomes. So they give meaning and a sense of purpose, aesthetics, and beauty to life. So it's not just the dollars and cents. It's really about the quality of life. So Florida Tax Watch, in many ways, helps improve when we work with different nonprofits. It's kind of like there's a commercial that says this company doesn't really build motors; it just makes the motors run better. Okay. In so many respects, Tax Watch doesn't run government, helps government run better. But all the times that we work with different nonprofits, by the way we look at the world, the way we focus on results, the way we look at the discipline of metrics and performance, we tend to improve their performance. We help them serve their constituents better. Because again, another thing that TaxWatch does, working with nonprofits, TaxWatch has an institute of citizenship, which helps those nonprofits have young people that are aspiring to grow up within that organization, learn how they can better present their mission, their purpose to city, county, state officials so they can integrate what's good for their organization, their mission, but also what's good for the common good. So it really does advance citizenship by allowing people with the Tax Watch Institute to better learn the mission purpose of government, but also how their organization can best align with what the nonprofit is attempting to do, and also the true public mission, public purpose.
Mhm.
So in that way, we're very, very fortunate to live here in Tallahassee, and I've been in the association and more importantly, the nonprofit and foundation world for nearly 4 decades, and it's been a true pleasure doing that because I've seen some folks. And some people get upset that some nonprofits go by the wayside. Well, that's okay if they're really not performing the mission. There's something kind of organic. It's kind of like life,
Mm.
all cycles of life. As long as you continue to serve the mission and purpose and people are being better served, it's improving their lives, it's improving their livelihood, it's improving the quality of life that we all live and enjoy, then I really want to see all those nonprofits grow.
Mhm.
And so the big challenge is to make sure that they're aligned and they're being relevant today and tomorrow, not just what they did in the past. It doesn't matter. The Tax Watch has done tremendous work over the years. But what matters is what are we doing today and tomorrow to make Florida and North Florida a better, prosperous, and healthier state for all of its residents, visitors, and businesses.
Well, thank you for that response, Dominic. The part of that I'm really taking away is that accountability
Mhm.
that Florida Tax Watch holds. And I think that has to probably be a very fine balance
Mhm.
that you're in a position to hold citizens accountable, government accountable, a multitude across the board accountable of how we are spending our tax dollars. And so I really respect and appreciate an
Yeah.
organization that is in that position. Because some
And
people don't like to be held
no one does. I
accountable.
mean, often we don't, but we're better off because of that.
Mhm.
But yet at the same time, we take that mantle of responsibility seriously, but not just seriously. We take it with a sense of humility because we're not holier than thou. We don't have a corner market on all the knowledge, even though our employees, our researchers, and officers, they're extremely, very, very bright and very, very dedicated people. We just look at how can we do things better? How is this nonprofit? How is this organization doing? How are these agencies? We have the used to be the Davis Productivity, then the Prudential, now it's the Tax Watch Government Productivity Awards. We now have a program to recognize the most impactful principal, the Tax Watch Principal Leadership Program, that recognizes 3 elementary, 3 middle school, 3 high school principals of low performing schools where English is spoken as second language and where they're um, free reduced lunches. So they're really the most challenging schools, and these principals are knocking it out of the park. They're educating those kids. They're saying every child can learn. There's no excuses, and they're getting great results, beating all the odds. And what they're doing, Tax Watch recognizes them. Then we pick the best of each of the 3. We celebrate them. Then we also give each of those 9 schools get a prepaid scholarship. The Florida Tax Watch works with a prepaid college foundation to ensure that we can give those kids a chance they would not otherwise enjoy. So it's a really wonderful thing, and we want to make sure that we can transform education because I think the combination of 2 things. Often people say education is the key. It really is, but education combined with character development and understanding the rubric, the foundation of what makes this nation unique and great, and the founding documents, the Declaration of Independence, the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, and all enumerated, described well in the Federalist Papers and the like. These are the bulwark of our freedoms. It's a great experiment in freedom. And nonprofits, working with Florida Tax Watch and others, help to bring out the best in our community. And so we're very privileged to be here to see how can we do things better than we did before.
Great. I love that. Thank you. Well, I shared with you a checklist of sorts. It was based from the National Council on Nonprofits. They
Mhm.
refer to it as a tax law checklist, in which most analysts predict that overall donations to charitable nonprofits will lower because of 4 changes in the new tax law. One of these changes includes doubling the standard deduction, which reduces the number of itemizers. This one change alone is expected to remove the tax incentive for charitable giving for 95% of taxpayers, which is astounding number. So, how are these changes determined on a higher level? How are they determined, and then how can nonprofit sector influence these decisions?
You know, there's a good and bad. The tough part is it makes it harder for nonprofits to maybe raise money. That's on the tough side. But I think it separates the wheat from the chaff. And that is basically it forces these nonprofit organizations to really serve their mission, not sit on the laurel of a tax deduction. Okay? So they can't take that for granted as readily as maybe we could in the past. So I think it really focuses us to have a cleaner, crisper focus on really impacting the constituents we serve, the community we serve, and show that what our nonprofits are doing really makes a difference. Because the reality is, particularly sizable gifts, they're only made by people who believe in the mission, see that the organization, nonprofit, is effective in that mission, is personally engaged in that mission, and enjoys the participation of doing so. Now, also part of that tax law is it did increase the threshold from 50% of deduction up to 60% of adjusted gross income. So for wealthier individuals, they've got actually a little more incentive because a greater percentage of their gross income can be applied to a charitable purpose. But the real thing is, I think, Felina, what this is going to do is really make sure that nonprofit executives and volunteers focus more clearly on the mission and can't take the tax deduction as as a given, and that they have to really earn the public and the constituents' confidence behind it.
And so for that, the decisions that are being made, sometimes they don't necessarily involve nonprofits being at the table. What's your advice of how the nonprofit sector can really express their voice in these decision-making processes?
I think nonprofits really, like any organization, use your constituents. We need to do that better ourselves, even in Florida Tax Watch. Florida Tax Watch has one of the most distinguished board of trustees in the entire state of Florida. But sometimes we're used to being an independent research group and don't engage them as often and as effectively as we could and should. And I find that when we do, these men and women are really well respected in their communities because we're a statewide group all around the state. I mean, our chairman is former State Senator Pat Neal. He's the owner of Neal Communities in Southwest Florida, a very, very large, one of the most respected residential home builders in the entire country, was Home Builder of the Year. Our chairman-elect is U.S. Senator George Lemieux. Piyush Patel is the owner and the president CEO of Kira Solutions. The president of AvMed is our secretary. We've got some astounding, Michelle Robinson with Verizon is a former chair, recent former chair. So you've got some outstanding volunteer leaders that we just need to use them a little better. I think nonprofits need to rely on their engagement more to make sure they get that word out. Because again, volunteer to volunteer is a lot more effective than someone that's paid and seen in that light. So they sometimes have a little bit more credibility. But by working together, I think nonprofits can affect the political system. And they have to be involved and engaged in the political system in a proper way. And best way, since they're nonprofits, they can't give, if they're 501c3s, they're substantially restricted. That we totally prohibit any political contributions, totally, and not involved even in lobbying. But we allow our volunteers, encourage our volunteers to be involved, and they're very engaged in the whole political process from cities, counties, school boards, regional areas, state, and sometimes even the congressional level.
Oh, fantastic. Well, another part of that checklist that I referenced earlier was making note that there are new provisions of the law that gives businesses a tax credit that will range between 12.5% to 25% of the cost of wages paid to qualified employees who are out on family and medical leave and receiving compensation pursuant to a written policy. However, in that same statement, it's not clear at all if the same provisions are extended to nonprofit organizations. So why is there such a disparity in tax laws for businesses versus nonprofit organizations?
I agree with you. I think we ought to have that advantage, but it may have to do with the fact that the nonprofits don't pay corporate income taxes is probably the major consideration. But I do think that businesses that encourage their employees and follow a uniform method, that's a wonderful thing. They let people, because it's a piece of time that that child will never otherwise enjoy, and the mother and father may never otherwise enjoy. Having raised 4 children, and I think you understand what I'm saying, it's so critically important. And
Mhm.
I realize now that, my wife and I realize that you can't take that time back. And so it's so special. It really is to make sure that the family is an important priority and that we don't neglect them. And sometimes, nonprofits working, some of the executives work so very hard, spend a lot of time. And I know building Florida Tax Watch over these past 4 decades, there's sometimes I've spent so many hours. It's been a great, great sacrifice
Mhm.
for my wife and our children, our family. And so I think that that opportunity to allow them to be paid to stay with the children for at least that early weeks and months is wonderful.
Right. Well, I think we definitely, as a sector, the nonprofit sector, to your advice earlier, we do need to use our constituents and raise our voices when we are seeing things that are such a disparity between the two sectors, business
Mhm.
versus nonprofit. But right now, we're just in the height of political environment right now in Tallahassee with session taking
Mhm.
place. It's just like it's Christmas for politics in Tallahassee, is how I look at it. If you don't mind, can you share maybe some of the discussions that are currently taking place regarding additional tax revisions that may have an impact on nonprofits?
Well, some of the big things that are happening in Tallahassee is most of those happen to deal with encouraging business to expand or relocate in Florida. And there's some potential decisions that may be made that I think are going to curtail that, and that is defunding Enterprise Florida or defunding Visit Florida. That's done a really good job of both directly for business, but also the nonprofits that help support those businesses in those communities. So I think we've been very blessed the last several years. We've used those organizations pretty well. There's been some abuses a few years ago, but those have been corrected and taken care of. There's a legitimate concern about trying to make sure we're accountable with that money. And listen, tax watch is no slouch when it comes to accountability. We have earned our spurs and continue to never sit on our laurels about accountability. But we went from 83 million tourists a year to now over 125 million tourists. Okay, that happened because tax watch did a lot of research in there, but more importantly, the legislature and governor appropriated tens of millions of dollars for advertising. We saw what happened after 9/11. You could have taken a bowling ball and bowled it down Miami Beach uh, and on Collins Avenue and not hit anybody for 3 or 4 blocks. That was devastating. So I'm not saying we ever want to go through that. It was terrible, but it had a very, very chilling effect on the economy and everything else. So we learned very carefully that you have to put out the word. You have to put your good face forward and also sell, out of sight, out of mind. So we have been able to get those kind of tourists. Those tourists bring a lot of money. They help support nonprofits directly and indirectly. They help improve the communities. They bring revenues that allow Floridians to not have to have a state personal income tax and to have a lower tax burden they might otherwise. And we just need to make sure that the people that come spend money and help improve the quality of our life. But we can't forget that. So that's one of them. The other areas, there's a number of different tax incentives that we're looking at and how important they are. But we want to make sure, look, Florida's got a a very good tax structure, very conducive to business and the like. We really don't tax individuals directly, more so indirectly through businesses and the like. We have no state personal income tax. We have no state inheritance tax, no state estate tax, and we we've done a lot of things that through years. I mean, this is not just recent. And tax which has been very instrumental on constitutional matters, keeping good tax laws, helping to either eliminate bad ones or even stopping some bad tax decisions from happening, which has laid a good a level playing field for the community, for the
Mhm.
taxpayers, but also nonprofits to grow and thrive in Florida. So the real challenge I think we're going to face is how these laws are changing and how nonprofits can adjust to being less dependent on the tax deductibility and more on their mission, their core purpose, and how they're adding value, but also how are nonprofits avoiding unnecessary duplication? How can they collaborate with similar situated nonprofit organizations so that together, rather than working disjointed, they work in a more effective role, in a more effective way, save money, improve outcomes for the constituents of the community, and build a stronger set of communities. So I think we're going to start thinking about applied business principles of better governing, where not everything's a silo. You support this nonprofit, this nonprofit. Like, how can we all kind of work together, find where we can avoid unnecessary duplication, find out what's unique to this organization, that, and make sure that they collaborate and work together. Kind of like case management, but case management on a larger community scale for all the nonprofits. If you look at all those that serve kids, there's a lot of them. How many of them do some things very similar? So I think there's opportunities to be more effective, far more efficient, and improve the governance, and ultimately improve the quality of the community.
Well, I think that's a great statement, and by far that ties into the mission of any, actually, in terms of collaboration. And considering that Florida Tax Watch is a nonprofit organization, how do you, I guess, how do you do some of the things that you had just mentioned yourself? If maybe some specific examples of some collaborations that Florida Tax Watch has with other organizations to help drive your mission.
Well, for example, one thing we've done recently, we just, Florida Tax just released a report, it's a follow-up to a report we issued about 8 or 10 years ago on the return on investment and the value of the old community college, now the college system of Florida. There's 20 colleges around the state. They perform a very, very valuable service. They add tremendous value in our communities. And for a number of years, they were kind of the stepchild. So I saw this coming up, and we talked with the chancellor, we talked to the college presidents, particularly right here. TCC President Jim Murdoch, Tallahassee Community College President Jim Murdoch, and he's the incoming leader of the Florida Council of College Presidents. And so him and others, we said, look, I think it may be time for us to help just independently from a third party standpoint, look at the value that the students get, the value the taxpayers get. There's a big high rate of return, a multiple rate of return that they produce in the community. But in doing so, we were also sensitive to the fact that, you got to pay for the study, but we don't take tax dollars. So we wanted to make sure that so we got a community foundation that helps support the project. So they were a partner, Helios Foundation, who's a very, very well respected partner in education. They helped fund the study, as well as another nonprofit association as well. So this enabled us to do some good quality work. The legislature was very receptive to it. They appreciate it. They respect the work of Tax Watch, respect that work. So there's sometimes we have to do collaboration. A lot of the studies that we do, we're the eyes and ears, but someone's got to do the lobbying. Someone's got to push that through. We don't lobby, they do, but they rely on the good quality, respected research and the messaging that Tax Watch helps produce and provide that will help them drive meaningful results. So I think that's the key. We say, like, what can we do that nobody else can, or what are we uniquely prepared and positioned to? Because you can't boil the ocean. There's only so much you can do with a limited period of time. And so I think we've done that pretty well over the years. And I'm dedicated for the rest of my time as President and CEO of Florida Tax Watch. And I've been blessed for a long time here. But I hope that I can continue and then share that as the transition years ahead take place, that finding the way to collaborate, again, in a unified way, we can make a stronger, better difference. And I think it's the underlying concept of how nonprofit organizations and foundations can really collaborate and work more effectively together for a better community.
I agree. Couldn't agree with you more on that, Dominic. So some fun questions for you.
Sure.
Where would you say is your favorite place to escape?
I like several places. I love to go to the beach. I don't go there enough. I love to go fishing. Actually, I prefer to catch fish, but going fishing usually entails that. I've just come from New York. Actually, went to New York with my sister, where I was born and raised until age 11 in New York City. We went and enjoyed my Aunt Jean's 100th birthday.
Nice.
So I got to stay with my mother's side of the family. She's actually my father's side of the family. She's my father's sister. Dad passed when he was 94 and a half, 4 years ago. So we got to see that side of the family. The best thing is we saw it in the celebration, not a funeral.
Yeah.
I also love to go down to South Florida, where I'm from. I've lived in Hollywood, Florida for a long time, so I love that as well. So love to travel with my wife, Debbie,
Great.
I love to also just spend time in our backyard. We have a new wonderful thing. We've got a fire pit that we just built in our backyard. I want to make sure it's not a money pit, so I actually go out and chop the wood, pick up the wood around the neighborhood, and cut it up and split it. It helps keep me exercising as well. But it's a lot of fun. Just reading, listening to
That's
music. And just one thing I don't have the pleasure yet is my children aren't married, so we don't have any grandchildren.
Oh
But that's
no,
our
the
next.
pressure.
That's the next challenge for my wife Debbie and I. And I'm blessed to have a wife who's just an incredible woman and an incredible partner and my best friend for now. We've been knowing each other more than 40 years, but we're coming up. This is our 40th wedding anniversary in July.
Wow,
So thank you,
congratulations.
thank you.
Dominic, thank you so much for your time. We really appreciate you spending time in the blue seat and look forward to collaborating in the future.
Felina, thank you. It's a wonderful pleasure talking with you and seeing you again.
Take care.